Hi, you're listening to Bonus Points, the official podcast of Mr. Astel's theology class. Join us as we put out into the deep and explore the world of theology and beyond.
Today, we are reintroducing the show for all of my new potential listeners. Let's begin. Well, welcome to this bonus episode of Bonus Points. Like we've done in the past, I use bonus episodes when I have something that is not unsubstantial, but maybe something that is more relative to me or to my experience here at St. Joe's, and less about a specific topic from theology. So this episode is coming out on August 15th, which is most importantly the Solemnity of the Assumption, but it's also our first day of classes here at St. Joe's. So I'm excited to welcome back all of my students who are returning, and I'm so excited to meet my new students, both our freshman class and some upperclassmen who are transferring in. So in this probably brief episode, I'm just going to share a little bit about what's new in terms of my class, and then talk a little bit about what this show is. If you are one of my new listeners, if you're one of my new students who's checking in for the first time because you heard there's a podcast. So if you are not one of these new students, or if you've already been listening, you kind of already know what's up, go ahead, feel free, skip this episode. I won't be mad. So what's new with me this year? Well, the big thing is that in addition to teaching, I'm also going to be taking on some responsibilities as assistant principal here. I'm excited. This is a new experience for me, but I'm excited to serve the school in a new way. And I'm so glad that I get to continue working with such a fantastic group of faculty, staff, administrators. I mean, it's exciting, right? I'm optimistic about where things are headed, and it's going to be a lot of change for me, or at least a lot of new skills I have to develop. But I mean, that's what the Lord is always calling us to, right? He's always calling us out of our comfort zone and into new things. And so, my motto remains the same as always, and that's just do whatever he tells you. To quote Mary from the Wedding of Cana, do whatever he tells you. He being, Jesus. So I spent a lot of time over the summer revising and fine-tuning my classes to keep building on the best of what we did last year. So a lot of things, not that they remain the same, but I looked at some of the things my classes did last year, and I saw that they really enjoyed a lot of it. So it's like, okay, great, we're going to keep that. We're not going to throw out good stuff. How can we make it even better? And so, especially if you're one of the new listeners, I want to talk about 3 of the projects that my classes do that I'm the most pumped about, the most proud of, if we're being honest. And I picked 3 different courses, just so you know, this isn't just the one fun class does these things and then that's it. So the first one I want to mention is the Timeline Project. This is something that my freshman Old Testament and New Testament classes do all year long. Our board of trustees generously donates Bibles to the freshmen at the start of the year, and specifically they receive a copy of the Great Adventure Bible from Ascension Press. We mentioned this Bible back in our episode on the story of Scripture. I forget what episode number that was, but if you go back to the series on reading the Bible, it was one of those. I love this Bible because not only does it use my favorite translation, the Revised Standard Version, Second Catholic Edition, but it also has so many different helpful charts and maps and articles and a timeline. So this is like what sets the Great Adventure Bible apart. It divides salvation history into different eras and then color codes the books based on those eras. So one of the things my freshman class does is they assemble their own Bible timeline based on these eras. So as we go throughout the entire Bible, they can maybe develop that idea of the overall picture of what's going on. So that's one of the freshman projects. On the other side of the range of classes I offer, the seniors take sacraments in the fall, and their first project is to build a church. Because we spend the first few weeks going over essentially vocabulary, but the different terms for the different items that we use during the Mass, the different parts of a church. And so they have to build a model of a church to represent some of these ideas. Now, they are allowed to build a traditional model using, Lego or cardboard or whatever they come up with. One group last year made theirs out of bread. To be fair, I feel some responsibility because I said basically any suitable building material, and they said, what does suitable mean? And I said that you can build out of it, and they took that as a challenge. One of the options I added, I think last year, maybe the year before, for this particular project is that in addition to being able to build a physical model, you can also build a church in Minecraft or some other similar game. And a lot of students took me up on that offer. And man, they're like, I don't think I'm good at Minecraft, but I think I'm okay. I see what some of these kids put together and I was impressed. Like, just no qualification on that. I was impressed. So that's another fun project that comes up pretty early in the year too. And then the last one I want to mention is probably the project that I'm most proud of for coming up with. Just a whole lot of pride in this episode, really. Anyway, the sophomores in the spring take a course called The Church. We talk about the church, the structure of the church, some of the different characteristics of the church. When we talk about the structure of the church, all throughout that unit, we do something that I call the model church simulation. So this is an idea that's based on the idea of a model UN. So if you're familiar with the Model United Nations that a lot of schools do, it's like that, but for the church. So where in the Model UN, they're an ambassador. In our simulation, they're a bishop. And so the first thing they have to do is choose which diocese they're going to represent. And again, I'm always outstanded by the creativity and just how much effort my students will put into this. I've had bishops from all over the world, places maybe I've never even heard of. But they'll do some research about their diocese. They'll tell me, where's your cathedral, that kind of thing. And then they'll also design a coat of arms. So one thing that all bishops do when they become a bishop is they design their episcopal coat of arms. The Pope does this when he becomes a Pope. He has the opportunity to make a new one. And so that's what they do. They choose symbols and they get to really express themselves, because a lot of these symbols are symbolic. A lot of these symbols represent different values and different virtues that they might prioritize or that they might cherish. And so it's a good opportunity for them to not only express themselves, because some of them are really good at that already, but maybe express themselves in a different way or in a symbolic way. So then after that, kind of as we learn about the different parts of the church hierarchy, we incorporate them into the simulation. So when we learn about the College of Cardinals, I elevate some of our bishops to be cardinals. And then we learn about conclave, the process of electing the Pope, and the cardinals will meet in the chapel and they will elect the Pope. And the whole thing, we include the Roman Curia, the different dicasteries, and then the whole thing ends with the holding of an ecumenical council. So this year I'm looking forward to, you've heard of Vatican II, get ready for Bolsberg IV. That's coming up this spring. Anyway, that was all just me talking about my class, I guess. What is this podcast? If you're one of my new students and you heard references to it, you're checking it out, what the heck is going on here? So I started this show because of the class of 2024. They're the juniors this year. When they were freshmen, and to this day, they love getting off topic, but it's usually substantial and it's usually productive. They don't get off topic too often talking about something random, but we would get off topic talking about things that were related to class, but not the center of what we were doing. And so I found myself in the situation where I had to keep saying, that's a really good question. That's really interesting. Unfortunately, we don't have time. That was always the problem. We don't have time. And eventually they said, you should start a podcast. You should start a podcast where you can talk about these things that are interesting that we don't have time to talk about in class. And for a while I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. I couldn't tell at first if they were messing with me, if they were making fun of me. But they persisted even into their sophomore year. And so I relented and I said, I'll do this, even if at that point I was pretty sure they would be the only ones listening to it. And even then, probably not all of them. But I listened. And so I created Bonus Points last year, I think in January. And since the beginning, this has always been about those students or about, my students. This whole show is really a collaboration. So I give credit to the class of 2024 for inspiring the show. The class of 2025, who are now beginning their sophomore year, they were the ones who helped me design the cover art that you see with every episode. They helped me narrow down a few options, and ultimately they were the ones who picked the one that you see today. And then the members of House Francis were the ones who helped me pick the intro music. For those who don't know, St. Joe's has a house system. So yes, it's like Hogwarts. And so many other schools. Hogwarts didn't come up with it. But so we're all divided into one of 4 houses. I am the advisor for House Francis of Assisi. And so we meet regularly. And one of the times we met last year, I was kind of working on this in the background and they got involved. So I want to give a shout out to all 3 of those groups, the class of 2024, 2025, and House Francis. So, like I said, my primary audience here is always my students. Like, if you're one of my students and you're listening to this, I am doing this for you. And they say when you start any kind of media or anything, you should know your 3 audiences. So my primary audience is, like I said, my students. My secondary audience is the parents and friends and family of my students. There are a lot of listeners who are not in my class, but their son or daughter is, their friend is, maybe they don't even go here, but it's like, they have a friend who goes here, who share the show with them. And so you're my secondary audience. You are, and I don't mean that in any kind of diminishing way. But I'm thinking about you when I'm writing episodes, when I'm coming up with things to talk about. Because I know for some of you, this is a good way to get involved in what your son, your daughter, your niece, your nephew, your friend, what they're doing in class. This is a way for you to, even if you're not joining them in class physically every day, this is a way for you to get involved a little bit. So parents, friends, family of my students, this is for you. This is for you as well. And then, of course, anybody who wants to go a little bit deeper, learn about an interesting variety of topics, I'm doing this for you as well. So whether you're one of my students or not, that's who I have in mind when I'm writing episodes, when I'm choosing topics, when I'm deciding how to address certain things. So I do want to take this opportunity to just say thank you for listening. I've said this before, but I am continually blown away by the number of people who tune in from all over. And when I say all over the world, that's not just a figure of speech. It is literally people from all over the world. So thank you to my listeners. If you are a new listener, you'll notice that I usually post an episode weekly. I may miss here or there, especially during the busier parts of the school year. And the length of the episode is almost entirely based on the topic. I shoot for not longer than class. Unless I have a guest on the show, then that's out the window. When I can, I try to choose topics that relate to something we're doing in one of my classes. So, it can be a true bonus point. But sometimes if I've already covered a related topic, I'll just reference an episode in class. Usually, regular episodes come out on Mondays. Now, this week's regular episode will be coming out on Tuesday because today's episode was the bonus episode. I did that because I really wanted this episode to come out on the first day of school. So our regularly scheduled content will be coming out tomorrow, and that's going to be an episode about praying with the Psalms. So make sure you check that out. So whether you're one of my students or not, I want you to know that I value your input and I want to hear from you. So the first thing you can do is check out our website. The website for this podcast is bonuspointspodcast.com. You can also find that link in the description. What can you do there? Why should you go there? That's the best way for you to give your input for the show. There you'll find a button that takes you to a form where you can submit ideas for future episodes. If you think there's something I really should cover, put it there. I take those very seriously. I add them to my list. I give them priority. So if you want to hear an episode about something in particular, your best way to communicate that is through the website. You can also submit questions. If you have a question about something that, well, maybe it could be its own episode, maybe not, but maybe it's just something you're curious about. There's also a link to submit questions for Question and Astle. Every now and then I do a Q&A episode that I call Question and Astle, where I take your questions. You can go back and listen to those to get a feel for what some of the questions are, and then submit your own on the website. Also on the website, you'll find the show notes, especially for episodes that are more substantial. I will post links to additional resources so you know where I'm getting some of my information. And if you're interested in going even deeper, you can learn a little bit more. So definitely check that out. Again, that website is bonuspointspodcast.com. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you're listening to this. Make sure you share it with somebody. Share it with your parents. Share it with a friend. Share it with somebody who you think will enjoy it. I'm so excited for this year. I know there are so many good things in store for us, but that's going to do it for today's episode. So thank you again for tuning in. I'm Mr. Astle, and thank you for joining us every episode as we continue to put out into the deep, exploring the world of theology and beyond.